Welcome and thanks for joining us for Working Together, Understanding How Community Coalitions Can Partner with College Campus Prevention, with our presenter, Sally Lanowski. This presentation was prepared for the Great Lakes PTTC under a cooperative agreement from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. The opinions expressed in this webinar are the views of the speaker and do not reflect the official position of the Department of Health and Human Services, or SAMHSA. The PTTC believes that words matter and uses affirming language in all activities. A few housekeeping items. If you have any technical issues, please individually message me, Jen Winslow, or Alyssa Koala in the chat section on your Zoom toolbar, and we will be happy to assist you. If captions or live transcript would be helpful, please use your Zoom toolbar near the bottom of your screen to enable them by going into the More section, select Captions, and Show Captions. If you have any questions for the speaker, please put them in the Q&A section at the bottom on your Zoom toolbar rather than the chat section. It'll help us keep questions organized as we are going to leave room at the end of this webinar for questions. You will be directed to a link to a short survey after this session, and we would really appreciate if you could fill it out. It takes just a few minutes. Certificates of attendance will be sent out via email to all who attended this webinar in full. It can take up to 2 weeks to receive certificates. Also, a recording and slides of this webinar will be on the PTTC website by probably next week. Please check out our PTTC calendar and our social media pages for upcoming events and resources. And now I would like to introduce our trainer. Sally Lanowski has 30 years of experience in substance use, prevention, community building, and teaching in higher education. She serves as a consultant to campuses nationally on the strategic implementation of comprehensive prevention programs, including extensive experience ensuring compliance with federal mandates and planning and implementing individual and environmental prevention approaches. Sally has expertise in building meaningful campus and town partnerships and engaging students in addressing off-campus student concerns as peer leaders. And I think Erin is going to introduce Sally.
Thank you so much. We are so excited to have Sally Lanowski with us today. She is truly an expert in the field of working on campus prevention. We are lucky to have her, so please take time to listen to Sally this morning. Thank you for joining us to be a part of this, and use that Q&A section so that we can really make the most of having this expert with us today. So I am delighted to introduce Sally to talk about working with college campus prevention, a lot of words. Thanks so much, Sally, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Erin. Good morning, everyone. It's my great pleasure to be here speaking with you about really what has been my life's work, which has been working as a campus prevention professional, closely tied to our community partners and coalitions around prevention initiatives. Hailing to you from Cape Cod, Massachusetts, pretty far from where you all are. But I'm delighted to be with you this morning. As I was preparing this talk, I sort of reflected on some of the writing I did during COVID, and I'm sure folks remember COVID. It was a difficult time in all of our lives, and for some of us, our creative juices got spiked a little bit. And I was asked to write a piece for campusdrugprevention.gov, which is the Drug Enforcement Agency's website for campuses around prevention initiatives. And I was asked to write about coalitions and the power of working together. And I just wanted to read a few lines from that. I am a huge Bruce Springsteen fan, so the title was the a seasoned coalition leader on prevention. It's not just Glory Days. So using Glory Days, the song, if you're familiar, as sort of the background. I'll just read a little bit here. Prevention is like rock and roll, bold, progressive, disruptive to the status quo, and built note by note by dedicated artists striving to leave a mark on the world. Like good music, comprehensive coordinated approaches that combine individual and environmental prevention strategies require practice, patience, teamwork, and passion. As I reflect on my journey in college drinking and drug abuse, I am one of the band, maybe a background vocalist, the bass guitar, the percussionist, the blaring saxophone, but rarely the lead singer. When asked to write about a campus and community collaboration, I imagine our metaphorical CCC rock band, that's the name of our coalition, on the road, telling our story to the faithful fans who fill the stadium. When prevention works, it feels good, alive, and hopeful. When it doesn't, it takes us back to rehearsal, to tune our instruments, remix our sound, and work together to get it right. Then we hit the road again like we never stopped. This, after all, is how we make lasting change in our community's quality of life. So I just wanted to sort of start with that and to thank everyone who's here today, because prevention is hard work, and working together, we all know that we can go a lot further. So we have some learning objectives for today, and my screen is not advancing. And I don't know why. Oh, here we go. So this is what we'll cover today. A little bit about how to identify and build partnerships with our campus-based stakeholders. I'm going to take you behind the scenes and share some jargon with you and some tips and time savers, hopefully, that will help you get behind those ivory tower walls. Recognize some current trends in higher ed that could be an entry point for collaboration, a new way to collaborate. And list some strategies for building some year-round sustainable partnerships. And I'll take you on a little guided tour of some of the work we've been able to do with our coalition. My slide is delayed. There it goes. So why do campuses and communities need to work together? Well, obviously, sharing resources, a division of labor, aligning on things that affect everyone in your community, and sharing successes and hardships are part of the work together. No one office, no one person, expert, or program can do it alone. Together, we can go a lot further, and oftentimes with less effort in many cases. I want to start by also saying there is good news in the substance misuse trending data among college students. And that is that binge drinking has decreased in the last 10 years from 36% of college students to 30% nationally. But there is a trend that is concerning, and that is that high intensity drinking has increased to 13% nationally. And high intensity binge drinking is defined as 10 or more drinks in a row. So that typically will end up in hospitalizations, injuries. And you may have heard something this past year about Borgs that students were drinking, which were gallons of alcohol mixed with Pedialyte and colored flavors. So how does substance misuse impact our communities and our campuses? In essence, students form impressions of their college experience from their peers, from social media, from alumni, parents that influence their substance use behaviors. When they move to a new town or city for college, or even if they stay in their own town, they're sort of like tourists. Having a vacation mindset, wanting to take in the scene, make the most of their time. They often arrive with spending money and looking for fun. If on move-in day, they see welcome back students, Budweiser 30-pack sale, $15.99 at liquor stores near campus, it sends a message that, hey, that's what we do here. And we're glad you're here and come on and drink with us. Community norms are often shaped by advertising, by retail outlet density, and alcohol prices. Those are things that typically a community coalition can address, but a campus cannot, because our influence is not in that venue. So we know many of the impacts that are listed here, where off-campus behavior spreads into the community from students who live on campus, and the costs are high, not only for community relations, but also for response costs and disturbances, and just neighborhood tensions and tensions between our students and our community. The academic impact of alcohol and substance misuse among our students is pretty well documented. Students who use substances or who drink pretty frequently, they typically take longer to graduate. They take semester withdrawals. They may drop out. They miss more classes. They have lower impacts. But there's also community level impacts from students drinking in particular. These are some of the statistics from the NIAAA that tell us that this is a major public health problem for this population, traditional 18 to 25 years old. And something to keep in mind is that 1 in 5 of 18 to 25-year-olds meet the criteria for an alcohol use disorder, and 16% for substance use disorder. So it is a very serious problem, and one that takes a comprehensive approach of all of us working together. So let's talk about working together towards shared outcomes. It all sounds good, but how do we do it? Really, at the end of the day, it's all about building relationships, one by one by one, identifying shared vision, building trust, and agreeing on some key strategic priorities. Relationships grow out of exchanges, and small interpersonal conversations add up and build connection and commitment to the work. We always know that tasks will get done, but not if you don't spend the time together capacity building. So I always make sure to talk with people about the importance of just those small conversations that you have, whether it's in the grocery store, on the phone, or someone that you connect with around a shared interest. I'm sure you're all familiar with collective impact. It's really a fancy way of saying collaborating to do wicked hard stuff to solve complex and wicked problems. It's an intentional way of working together, sharing and learning from each other, and hearing many voices and viewpoints broadens our understanding of complex issues. Whoops. On the campus, collective often happens sort of in-house, and you may not really hear too much about that. But what we know on a campus in prevention, initiatives include a wide range of campus departments. And I'll talk about some of those a little bit later on as we get through our presentation here. But some of the usual collaborators and stakeholders are campus law enforcement, your housing staff. So those are your residence assistants, your residence life staff, the people who live in the residence halls with your students and provide a supportive environment for them. Our faculty, fraternity and sorority life. Many institutions have a pretty robust Greek system, which has its own norms and values and traditions that sometimes can pose challenges for our prevention teams. So initiatives have to involve those leaders and directors. And then our student affairs staff. The list is much broader, but hopefully you're getting a sense of some of the ways that collective impact initiatives happen on a campus. So to increase our impact, campuses and communities working together can certainly bring a lot more sectors to the table. And those include some of the sectors here. In terms of local government, often community groups and coalitions have connections to the mayors, select boards, health and safety officials, because they work with community initiatives. Those might be strong ties in a campus, So those are ways that community folks can bring those ties along to campus prevention groups. Your community coalitions also tend to serve youth serving organizations. So for the high school and middle school and even younger kids, which the colleges tend to focus really more on their own populations. So that's another bridge that can be helpful to bring to the table. Business owners, landlords, parks departments, rec departments, local law enforcement. I would include alcohol retail, beverage retailers here, as well as schools and parents. Connections to parents. We know parents have a tremendous influence on the use and misuse patterns of their children, and that continues right through their college years. And so having those strong community ties and parent involvement with the younger population helps us in campuses when those students come to our campuses and are pretty informed and resilient and have supportive parents. On a campus, it's important just to think about individuals. My campus has I think 3,500 staff. We're the biggest employer in our region. And individual staff or faculty may have connections outside of work to any of the groups that you see here. But that doesn't have anything to do with their day job on the campus. They're not doing the day-to-day prevention work. So sometimes a connection that you may have with someone through that works on a campus can help you find out who's doing the prevention work on that campus. So sort of using your connections strategically can help boost our prevention work together. So let's talk about some of the current trends in higher education and how we might see those as opportunities for partnership. And in a nutshell, we all work in various sectors and have deep knowledge of our own workplaces, but we may not know much about other industries, including higher education. I don't want to assume that there's no one here from higher education, and I hope that there are actually, so that perhaps you can add something in the chat if I leave it out. And certainly if you have any questions, it's a good time to ask that. But in my experience in college health, most adults remember their college years very fondly, but through the eyes of an 18 to 22-year-old. And so they're looking back sort of wistfully and nostalgically at their experiences and the good times they had, and maybe some of the hardships they had. But there's a lot of sort of reminiscing and glory days, I guess I would say, going back to my opening sort of reading for you. And oftentimes those memories are frozen in time while everything has changed in terms of the party scene, social media, and the development of our young people. They're different than many of us were when we were in college. They've had different challenges. They've grown up with different things and different attitudes about the world and access to information and disinformation. So understanding sort of the current trends can be really helpful, I think, in our understanding. So some of the things that are burning issues on our college campuses right now, there's a pretty extensive list here. Title IX legislation and mandates, if you're not familiar, that addresses sexual violence, harassment, and violence on campuses so that an individual student, staff, or faculty is safe in their pursuit of their academic career. There are protections for survivors and alleged perpetrators. Every campus has offices and staff of Title IX investigators. There's mandated reporting, mandated education. If someone discloses that they've been sexually violated or harassed, there are mandated reporters, very much like we hear in the school systems. So that has taken on a massive initiative on campuses to tighten up their discipline procedures, their education, and to provide those investigation offices as well as support for students. So that has been a huge priority for us. We also hear about the enrollment cliff. And by that, I mean that there are lower birth rates during the Great Recession, which will result where college students starting in the year 2020-25, with the number of 18-year-olds dropping by 15%. We're seeing small liberal arts colleges all around the country close, merge with larger campuses, smaller campuses, perhaps merging together. And this is not only about the economic bottom line of our institutions, but it's becoming more competitive. And with fewer students attending colleges, institutions are going to have to respond to that changing demographic. And that's causing tremendous stress, as well as innovation on our campuses. Dual enrollment programs, and those are programs, oh dear, those are programs where high school students enroll in college classes at the same time. And so we may have students coming in to our institutions really in their first year, but having earned enough credits to be a sophomore. So they go through I apologize, that will turn off in a minute. They'll get an advanced degree in a shorter amount of time. We also have staff retention, burnout, quiet quitting, recruitment challenges on our campuses, just like I'm sure all of you do in your workplaces and agencies, where there's been tremendous turnover in student affairs leaders, in college presidents, in prevention, people doing their jobs, and people struggling to not only recruit staff, but to have them stay. So sometimes that is affecting our prevention initiatives. The changing workplaces, the movements to defund police, those are very active on many of our campuses, so that our police departments and campus safety are working oftentimes with students and administration, more community policing and how to address some of the concerns that have been brought forward in response to the Black Lives Matter movement and other initiatives. And then obviously social media, reputation management. If it bleeds, it leads. We know that in the news. And so that is something that keeps us all awake at night. Other things, the changing demographics of the undergraduate population. I mentioned the enrollment cliff, but there's also more first-generation students coming to our campuses, meaning that they are the first in their family to attend college. And so they have additional challenges oftentimes in terms of not only their readiness, but the family support and understanding how a university works and how to be most successful. So campuses are dedicating a lot of time and resources to supporting our first-gen students so that they can be academically successful. And that's been a wonderful, wonderful change in higher ed, I think really in the last probably 15 years. Our campuses tend to be more diverse. There's more interest in community college to the 4-year transfer. And so that has great opportunities for community colleges, sending students off to pursue their 2-year degree, their 4-year degree, and that builds connections there and also keeps our young people in their community a little bit longer before they come to a new community, and they may have matured a little bit and developed some job skills that they bring to the university, and that's really great too.
Sally, I'm sorry to interrupt. Your sound is going in and out a little bit. We were wondering if you could turn off your camera, and we'll see if hopefully your sound will be good.
I would love to turn off my camera.
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. See if it works here. Yep. The other things, increased cost of a college degree is on the minds of everyone. And so people are questioning the value of a college degree, looking at, can they graduate sooner? Can they stay at community college to save some money? And more people choosing not to go to college in pursuit of other careers, which of course is important in our economy, but it poses challenges for institutions in terms of making their bottom line. Housing and food insecurity are tremendous issues among our college students. Nearly 1 in 5 students in 2022 have reported having no permanent place of residence during college, meaning they couch surfed or maybe stayed in their car sometimes, but they didn't have a permanent address or secure housing, which, as you can imagine, is very stressful. Food insecurity, about 1 in 3 students nationwide experience food insecurity, not having enough to eat, having to make decisions about food or books or other tough decisions like that. Many of our students are eligible for food assistance programs like SNAP benefits, which is a wonderful resource, but students may not know about. And certainly our community partners do and can help there. We have declining mental health among our young people. That's posing a challenge on our campus in terms of having counseling services, virtual counseling, and making sure that we have robust community provider referrals as well. We have the outsourcing of mental health services. Many campuses are not able to keep up with the demand and are actually outsourcing their services to online counseling or to community agencies. And that's an opportunity within our communities as well for community providers. And another trend, just to keep in mind, is a terminology shift from prevention to well-being. I've been in prevention long enough to know when I started, people used to refer to wellness and the wellness wheel. I hated it then, I hate it now. And part of that is because, to me, and this is my opinion, well-being and wellness sound like an individual focus, and prevention is really about community and about all of us. But nonetheless, there has been a shift to well-being, and as it's being referred to, people are thinking of community level. So perhaps it is just my own my own bug, I don't know, but that has been a shift, is that you may see more wellness or well-being language. And another challenge, which I didn't list here, is the opioid epidemic and what that's bringing to our communities. So with these changes, there are also opportunities for us, for community coalitions and community groups. We mentioned mental health, suicide prevention, resilience focus. Many of our community agencies, youth serving agencies, are similarly addressing these issues. We know that the health promoting universities via the Okanagan Charter is taking some pretty large momentum nationally. I'll speak about that in a minute. And prevention staff that have expanded or elevated roles on our campuses, where before we used to see a prevention coordinator on a campus, maybe called the alcohol and drug prevention coordinator or the health educator. Many of those folks are now vice chancellors for wellness and well-being that includes alcohol or other drugs. They're at the key decision-making tables of our campuses alongside our mental health staff. And that's been very beneficial, I think, for getting prevention on the minds of our senior officials, our senior administrators, and our community partners as well. So let me take you through some of the new frameworks that are in place in sort of the college prevention field. And these are opportunities that may present themselves for you as you're forming partnerships. So one is the JED Foundation, which is a comprehensive public health approach to promoting mental health and preventing suicide that assesses efforts and identifies strengths and areas for improvement. Nationally, we know the 988 suicide crisis dial code is a first step towards a transformed crisis care system in America. It's a universal entry point for anyone needing help to connect with a trained counselor. But on a campus, that may not be as there may not be as much dedication to communicating that new resource and that new framework and sort of the national entry point for individuals. So that is something typically that community coalitions are promoting within, which can be collaborative with a campus, particularly for off-campus folks, or to help meet that demand so that anyone who's struggling has immediate assistance, even if your counseling center is closed. There is a number that can be called and someone will be immediately connected to a trained counselor who can talk with them and help refer them to services. That is a tremendous entry point for us. The JED Foundation was formed with the Suicide Prevention Resource Center. It's an evidence-based model. If you look at the wheel here, it probably looks pretty familiar to our most of our prevention work. Promoting social connectedness is one of the wheels on the hub here. And that is something that community connections can build, helping people feel connected to where they live, work, study, play. And those are ways that we can work together in community building. Service delivery, providing mental health and substance misuse services. I talked about the opportunities there for collaboration, for more community referrals, and insurance covers mental health counseling, and that can help boost our economies for our providers in our communities. That's a great thing. And campuses are also looking at means restriction for suicide prevention. So that means looking at safety, looking at rooftop access, where people could jump and end their lives or get seriously injured. So those often involve the work of our local fire departments, our emergency responders, and those bring in collaborative initiatives as well. The Okanagan Charter is an international charter for health promotion, started in Canada, and it's at this point 13 campuses have signed on to this our international charter, and this is a pretty big groundswell of support that's happening in campus prevention. This initiative is, the link is here so you can read a little bit more about it. Has two calls to action, and really it is to embed health into all aspects of campus culture, and to lead health promotion action collaboration locally and globally. And so hopefully as you're looking at these calls to action and seeing, recognizes that the well-being of people, places, and the planet are independent, you're getting a sense that this is a systems-based approach. And this is not something that a campus can do alone. By its very nature, it is something where we must engage with our communities and our community partners. It uses a social ecological framework where the community is a key domain of influence. It's a great door for community coalitions to enter, to look at as we think about the built environment and our walkable places, our places of walkable cities, complete streets, alcohol-free options, and health equity and social justice for all. So this is a wonderful opportunity. More campuses are signing on. They're looking for partners. They're forming subcommittees. And these are wonderful ways, if you have an opportunity to look at the website and to reach out to your campuses, look at their website, see if they're doing anything with Okanagan. That could be a fine entry point. Another area of focus is town-gown relations, and town-gown is often a word that's sort of funny, but it means, the academy or the institutions of higher education working with our cities and towns. It's very important to build these connections. The International Town-Gown Association, it's itga.org, is the premier resource for addressing some of the concerns you see here and emerging issues and opportunities between and within higher ed institutions and their communities. So we talked a little bit about some of the impacts that alcohol in particular and substance misuse has on our students, as well as their academics. But the areas of focus for the town-gown relations often involve sort of party behavior, underage alcohol consumption, And those blend into quality of life issues. They can affect our economic development. They can affect housing and other issues. So this group works really closely together around all of these concerns. And civic engagement, voting, volunteerism, mentoring, those are things that keep our communities strong and vital and support our democracy. So those are wonderful things that campuses and communities can work together on, and to get our students engaged in the communities in which they're studying and living, even if it is for a short time. So I would really encourage folks to check out the ITGA. If you haven't, their website is quite robust, and they do have a whole alcohol prevention tab, which has great resources and grants that folks can pursue. So this all sounds wonderful, but how do we identify and build these relationships with campus stakeholders? How could you reach out to someone like me or my colleagues on a campus and get our attention and get our buy-in for some of the concerns that you may have or some of the work that you have? So part of it is knowing the jargon and who's who. So student affairs is often called student life. And in essence, that's everyone except academics, everyone but the faculty. So they're the housing staff, the dining staff, the student activities, the counseling centers, the health center, all those fraternity, sorority life, those sorts of offices. Public relations, they're often kind of our spin doctors or the branding and identity folks. They push out the good news that's happening on our campuses, and they also respond to the bad news. And so those are important offices to work with and staff to work with in terms of reputation management and addressing concerns and putting out successes that you share in prevention work. Student success is sort of the new term for advising offices. So advisors and supports to help students pursue their degrees. So study skills, learning commons. Learning commons is a new term for the library, typically. It's where students go, and it's not just books anymore, but it's computers and virtual workspaces and team-based learning. So you may hear of a learning commons as opposed to a library. That might be an entry point. Student engagement is our student activities folks typically. So they help plan the student events, the concerts, the intramural sports, student government, student clubs, organizations. Those are great opportunities for volunteerism, leadership. And you'll find on your campuses, there are active mind chapters, there are peer-based alcohol prevention groups that would love to work with communities around some of the issues. And college students in particular love to work with high school kids and middle school kids in mentor capacities. And we're also finding that they really enjoy working with elders in the community and forming connections with adults. So our student engagement offices are often great places to make connections with those student groups. Our campus police, many police departments are just like the police departments in your towns, and others are more campus safety focused. But those are often very strong collaborators on our campus. I mentioned the peer education groups, health centers, residence life, off-campus life staff, emergency preparedness staff. Most campuses work really closely with their cities and towns around disaster planning, whether that's floods, it's COVID, it's epidemics, it's fires, all of the things that happen that require emergency response. Our campuses and our communities are working together, and those oftentimes involve prevention folks. So that's a great entry point. Our athletics department and alumni relations, I think those are pretty well known. So how do you connect with these stakeholders? I often, someone once told me that the best way to make connection is the 100 cups of coffee model, where you just have coffee and conversations with as many people as you can. And okay, well, if you don't like coffee, I guess you could have soda or seltzer or something. But really it is about sort of having those one-on-one connections. In our community, our town manager his name is Joe. He has a cup of Joe. So he has weekly meetings. He holds coffee hours in a local coffee shop where residents can go in and just talk to him and share their concerns. What issues are you most concerned with? What's going well? Having those conversations. We do coffee with a cop in our community where community members can come and talk with a police officer, share their concerns, share information, build connection. So if we use that as a model as well, having one-on-one conversations, reaching out to folks on our campuses that you may know and asking good questions. What issues are you most concerned about? What efforts are going well on your campus? What do you have in place? What's on your wish list? Who else do you suggest I talk to? I really like the what's on your wish list question because I've asked that many a time in working with other campus staff or community agencies. And sometimes something that feels insurmountable on their wish list that they could never get done is something that we can easily deliver. I remember in one case, we were implementing a screening and brief intervention program on our campus, and our Dean of Students office was very resistant. And when we asked what the barrier was, she said, there's no way we can ever make all these appointments, individual appointments for students. We do not have the staff. We don't have the time. This cannot happen. And that was a really easy win for us because we said, okay, no problem. We have some grant funding. We will hire a receptionist to help make those appointments and to take that burden away from your very busy office and your staff that are so busy. And that immediately removed the barrier. So sometimes something on someone's wish list, you can deliver. And obviously when that happens, that often takes you a long way in building that relationship. And then who else do you suggest I talk to? That's a great way to build connection. So think about how you meet people in life and some of the questions that you might ask. But I think giving people a chance to talk about what's working well is really important, what's in place, and then what's missing. Because as we identify some of those gaps, sometimes those are things where we can work together and build something really amazing and powerful to promote health and well-being. Collaborations with faculty and students. There's a whole host of opportunities for students and faculty to contribute to our communities and the work that they're doing around prevention. So internships, practica, graduate degree projects, dissertations that address substance misuse and impacts in our communities or innovative strategies. There's endless opportunities. I happen to be in a school of public health, and public health courses often partner with community agencies for program evaluation, program planning, data analysis, and student projects in the real world. I taught a health promotion program planning class for graduate students this fall, and I had 8 groups of students working on different issues in the community. 2 of them worked on opioid prevention, Narcan distribution in the community, as well as fentanyl test strip distribution and what that could look like. And they had a wonderful experience and brought some of those connections to our campus from our community groups. So those are often opportunities you can make great connections with faculty and with students who are doing some of this work, and they can take some of the burden for you off you for free, which is great. I think thinking broadly, so courses in regional planning, construction, landscape architecture, those can all be tapped into to help improve the built environment or to look at the way that our built environment shapes behavior And I'll talk a little bit about that in practice in a little bit. So I sort of put together an academic cheat sheet. And the reason is that the busy times on campus often don't match those in your community. So sometimes a great opportunity is missed just because the timing is off, but the interest is there. It's just the timing isn't aligned. So how do you find out what an academic calendar looks like? I'm coming from sort of a traditional 2-semester program, fall, spring, with a winter session, and summer session is sort of light on courses. But other campuses have trimesters, they have co-ops. So it'd be important to understand what the academic schedule is like on a particular campus that you want to reach out to. And a great way to do that is to Google the Parent and Family Academic Calendar on the institution website. Institutions do a great job engaging parents as partners. So that calendar will have important dates, milestones, traditions, seasonal priorities. It's a great way to get a glimpse at what some of the activities are. And a big note here is that the fiscal years in higher ed tend to run July 1 to June 30th, which is very different from state and federal grant timelines and budgets. I know that I ran a number of federal grants through UMass, and my fiscal years were sometimes October 1 to September 30th, or February to January 31st, and they did not line up with our fiscal years at the institution, and so there was a lot of accounting nightmares. So that's just something to think to keep in mind if you're thinking about collaborating on a grant or reaching out for resources or financial support. Where are people in their budget planning process? So here's a little cheat sheet, sort of based on a traditional sort of 2-semester academic schedule, and some typical events and milestones. So the summer is freshmen coming onto campus and parent orientation. We now do parents come for orientation and learn about the university resources or the college resources and how to support their student, really seeing parents as partners in prevention work as well. So that happens usually throughout the summer. Construction, campuses are often torn up. Buildings are being built, roads are being fixed, parking lots, walkways, steam pipes, because those are times when they can do those projects and not disrupt the busy campus life when everyone is back. So sometimes it's a little bit hectic getting around our campuses. Faculty tend to be off contract, meaning they're not available to meet or respond to your emails. Some are, but most of them are on a 9-month contract. So they're not really working on community things in the summer. They may be working on their research projects or writing, but you may not get much response if you're reaching out to faculty in the summer, and that's important to know. Sports camps, conferences are in campus facilities, and staff training and readiness for the next semester happens in the summer. In the fall, there's a hub of activity as students are moving in. Clubs and organizations are recruiting. Greek Life is doing recruitment, or what used to be called Rush. So there's parties and social events that are happening that can cause some neighborhood distress in terms of noise and sort of party crawl behavior. The red zone we talk about is the first 6 weeks, which is the time when new students come to campus and they're at highest risk for alcohol-related injuries, incidents, or sexual assault. So that is something that campuses focus very heavily on, safety and messaging for our first-year students around responsibility, accountability, and taking care of one another. Our neighborhood concerns start to pop up as our towns fill up with more young people when it's been quiet in the summer. And there's more traffic, more noise, trash perhaps. Homecoming and Halloween are traditions that bring lots of parties and lots of alumni, as well as young people into our communities. And so those are big planning times and also places where collaborations between our communities can and should be happening. Winter is not unlike summer. Faculty are typically on their research agenda, not in their offices, not often doing committee work and that sort of thing. There's limited student events, and off-campus students may go home. So winter is oftentimes a good time for prevention planning, because prevention staff are there working on reports, looking at data and that sort of thing. Spring is full of events, Black History Month, Sexual Assault Awareness Month, St. Patrick's Day, Spring Break, Cinco de Mayo, graduation, and alumni events. Spring is very busy on our campus with a lot of focus towards graduation and sort of the critical events of spring parties and people graduating, going on to jobs and that sort of thing. A tip that I have learned is that April is the worst time to reach out to a campus for collaboration, because in April, everybody is fried. The students are fried. Academically, they're stressed out. Typically roommate conflicts in residence halls are at a peak. Depending on where you are, we're in the Northeast, so the weather is starting to get nice and people are distracted by wanting to be outside and enjoy the sun and get out from the doldrums of a gray, long winter. And that creates some neighborhood disturbances. But April is usually when everything is amping up, and if you ask for a collaboration, you're more likely to get the answer no, just being blunt. So, some tips on working with an academic calendar. So let's think a little bit about what a campus coalition can bring to a campus. So much. Community coalitions have local and regional data. Many of you are working within the strategic prevention framework. You have strategic plans, you have goals, you have objectives, you have data on youth substance use, misuse, attitudes, parental attitudes. Campuses typically do not have that. You have that. You usually have it in really palatable formats and presentations that you can share to get buy-in. You have connections with those youth-serving agencies that can be beneficial for academic projects, for building connections with our students and young people, and working together on community partnerships. You have funding via grants. Oftentimes our federal grants require working with other agencies or working with certain populations. We know college students are a tremendous risk for substance use and in particular. So that's a wonderful opportunity to work with a campus. Grant writing expertise goes both ways. I have found that community coalitions have really great grant writers, and they're adept at getting grants to keep their staff and to keep all their initiatives in place. And on our campuses, we have grant writers as well. So working together with our prevention people, we can put our heads together, share some grant writing components, and develop a plan together. And then obviously your coalition has relationships that those of us in campus prevention maybe don't have. And so that is something certainly to bring. So UMass has a new program called the UMass Journey, which is sort of looking at a 4-year milestone and dedication to help students succeed. And it reads, their mission is, and I'll read it to you, students at UMass Amherst will become global leaders who create lasting positive change in their communities. And it has 3 themes: identity, leadership, and well-being. So that is a brand new program. And when you hear of that and you think of how your coalition might interact with this new program, what could community engagement look like if we want our students to become global leaders to create positive change in their communities? Are there opportunities for them to engage with your community around making some positive change, making some connections? What leadership skills or opportunities could you help students develop? Perhaps there's perhaps there's an opportunity for a student to learn about civic engagement, or learn about public speaking, or learn about presenting public health data to different audiences over social media or via other channels. So a new program on a campus that includes things like global leadership and working towards creating lasting change in their communities. When we talk about that on a campus, we're not talking about just within our walls. We're talking about in our communities. So that is a great opportunity for community groups to connect. And oftentimes on the campus, we're trying to connect with those community groups, but we don't know quite who to go to. So a connection with a community group, community coalition, can help make that connection really simple. So you might look at, search your campuses for new programs, read the news announcements from your university, and see if there's something new that you could reach out to. So I'm going to take the next 15 minutes or so, maybe a little bit less, to take you a little walkthrough of a coalition in action, and that is our Campus Community Coalition to Reduce High-Risk Drinking at UMass Amherst. I'm the founder and co-chair of that group that we formed in 2005. And what I'd like to do is highlight sort of a quick review of our 15 years of coalition work, and give some examples of how we've had interventions for the right problem at the right time with the right solution, and also how we've had some failures, because failures are always part of the process of prevention and of life, I guess. You're not always going to be successful, and sometimes epic failures in prevention actually are the greatest learning that we can have, because they take us to the success place. And so one of the things that's kept our coalition going has been sharing successes, as well as sharing the failures. So our coalition, when we formed, we focused on sort of a strategic prevention framework, looking at 5 strategies for environmental change. So as you look at these different elements, you'll recognize that these all involve the community. None of these are things that a campus can do alone. So restricting alcohol marketing and promotion, we can certainly do that within our own particular campus. But if we're looking at our bars and restaurants and liquor stores, if they're having drink specials and happy hours and nickel beers and things like that, that our students are going to, we may not have much influence, but working with our communities and those liquor store owners and bars and liquor stores, we can build some momentum and shared success. So this was a framework that we embraced. And when I mentioned that we started with readiness, we looked at data to identify what our problems were and what some of the areas for collaboration might be. And we started out by focusing on enforcement of laws and policies. So working together, our Campus and Community Coalition in 2006, our town officials, landlords, police, and university worked together to increase sanctions for alcohol-related behaviors and community impacts. So town bylaws are something that the university certainly couldn't demand happen. So we had to work together. And a nuisance house bylaw was put in place, which essentially, if there are repeated noise complaints, traffic disturbances, parking, or sort of party overflow behaviors at any rental property, apartment complex, or house, that the tenants can be charged $300 nuisance house fee, and the landlord gets notified. On the second offense, the landlord is notified as well. And on the third offense, the landlord needs to take action to evict. The nuisance house bylaw addressed the problems with some of the traditional party houses in our community, But it also had the added benefit of putting landlords on the hook a little bit too, and not saying it's always a student problem. Is that the landlords, if they know that this is happening, they have an obligation to address this as well. Keg registration, kegs are not that popular anymore, at least in our community, but requiring kegs to be registered with the police department so that there's a permit and an identified individual who's 21, who meets with the police chief and pays for that permit, so that there's a little bit of accountability for that party. We increased the fines for open containers to the state maximum, and increased all the fines for bylaw violations. In terms of enforcement efforts, a mutual aid agreement was created between the town police and the university police to help get over some jurisdictional issues. Targeted enforcement efforts on and off the campus, and retailer training to reduce overservice and underage consumption. It's important to note that these municipal outcomes are things that brought our community partners on board with our campus prevention staff, but also helped build relationships that have stayed strong since 2006, and we've been able to keep momentum and continually address concerns. In terms of alcohol retail strategies, this was kind of an interesting story. I think it was about 2007, one of our liquor stores right near the campus had a billboard out that was advertising ice luges. I don't know if people remember those. They were ice luges that you could pour shots of alcohol down and drink off the luge, and it was sort of a novelty that was being promoted. He had a sign out, as students were returning for fall semester, ice luges available here. And we reached out to him, Sean was his name, and on behalf of the coalition, and just said, hey, we want to give you a heads up. We're concerned this sort of advertising promotes overconsumption of alcohol and is sort of antithetical to the work that we're trying to do to promote health and safety among our students on our campus. And he said, oh my God, I had no idea. How can I help? Literally, that's what he said. How can I help? I will take that down. I didn't realize. Sean joined our CCC and he led our alcohol retailer group. And some of the things that they were able to accomplish through the work of our community coalition. So this was not the campus doing these things. These were our community coalition. We're server training, responsible retailer program. The bars work together to ban certain alcohol promotions, and there have been many over the years. But SantaCon was one where people dress up like Santa and go bar hopping, and then you have a bunch of drunk Santas in your town. Not a good look, not a good night, not a good way to celebrate Christmas, in my opinion, and pretty disruptive in our communities. We had a St. Patrick's Day tradition that started called the Blarney Blowout. That's for another talk, but the bars agreed to ban the Blarney Blowout promotions as well as drink specials and that sort of thing. Purchase surveys and compliance checks, our youth coalition coordinated those. The bars agreed to end pub crawls, although I think those are creeping back up. So we'll have to keep our eyes on that idea. I think those are sort of coming back. But the point to be made here is that it was our community coalition that paid for and hosted server training and the purchase survey and compliance checks. And we on the campus through the coalition were able to boost those and communicate those good deeds that were being done by our businesses to promote health and safety in our community. And that was a win-win. So those are wonderful opportunities for collaboration. Landlord strategies. Our landlords are tremendous partners in prevention. And the way we sort of in our coalition, we started with a small group of 5 people that were sort of handpicked to work on the issues of prevention because they had been coming to a group called the Amherst Problem Partnership for 10 years or so. People were going to a meeting. Can you imagine, called the Problem Partnership? It was an awful meeting. People would point fingers at each other and say, the university this, the town that, you can't do that, you're doing that. And people were fried. But when we learned about the strategic prevention framework and evidence-based prevention and formed a coalition and said, we're going to use data, we're going to use a strategic plan, we're going to use evidence-based work, and we're going to look at best practices, would you be on board? 5 of those people from the Problem Partnership said, yes, I want to do something different. I want to make a difference. And I believe that something can happen. I can't sit in these meetings anymore. So Steve Walzak was one of those founding members of our coalition. He's a landlord, and he was the president of the Pioneer Valley Landlord Association. How he got motivated to join our coalition was in 2003. There was a Hobart hoedown riot that happened off campus, a big day drink party that erupted in violence. Police cars got flipped, and Steve's property got damaged, and his Puffton Village apartment sign got burned. And he offered a reward. He posted the picture of the person burning the sign and offered a reward for whoever came forward and could identify that individual so that they could be held accountable. And a student turned in another student. Steve joined our coalition because he didn't want those sorts of things to happen, and he felt that landlords could have a part. So we worked on a model lease agreement that included things like guest limits for apartments, noise rules, parking ordinances, where people could park. Obviously, if people can't park all over the lawn and all over the streets, they're not going to have such big parties. Limiting noise and the number of guests that can be allowed in an apartment. So most of the apartments and rental agencies in our community use that model lease. So no matter where you go, the lease has the same restriction on usually no more than 10 guests. We coordinated a semesterly landlord meeting with the town police chief and the campus community coalition to talk about trends, share when the high volume weekends are, when homecoming is, Halloween. Well, people know when Halloween is, I guess. But when homecoming is, when Greek week is, when we're expecting major influxes of people to the community, whether it's for athletics or conferences, anything like that. The police will share what their tactics will be for responding to large gatherings. Are they going to be enforcing the open container law? Or are they going to be doing more education? Are they going to be busting up big parties? Are they going to be monitoring and then trying to disperse crowds, which is what they're tending to do more because of the concerns with violence, is letting parties sort of just dissipate on their own. By monitoring and just sort of interrupting the crowd behavior as they're arriving. We offered a campus conduct check for landlords. So if a student was in good standing in the residence halls, they would get a sign off that said they're in good standing in the residence halls so that they would hopefully be a good tenant. That is no longer in place. We now have an online certification course for first-time student renters that covers things like being a good neighbor, understanding alcohol responsibility, how to talk to neighbors about behavior and about concerns that you may have, keeping your noise down, understanding that people have different schedules, that people go to work and kids go to school when you may be up late night, and disseminating information. So our landlords are sending out the same university messages around health and safety and well-being that we are, which shows that we're in this boat together. Some of the emerging issues that I mentioned that our coalition had worked really hard, and when prevention works, you're really excited, but you always are keeping your eyes on the ball. And so party crawl, and that is sort of the aimlessly walking down city streets or neighborhoods, looking for parties, looking for where there are people and people showing up there. Social media makes parties happen really quickly. So in 15 minutes, you can have 15 people somewhere, and in 15 minutes, you can have 1,000 because they'll get the tag and they know right where to go. And those become crowd management problems. Day drinking, party promoters are capitalizing on our student market, Barstool Sports, Bro Bible, Frat Life, the list goes on, sort of selling this college party life, causes challenges for our prevention staff. And tailgating, crowds, and unregulated consumption at football games are increasingly becoming concerns in our communities. So to address some of these concerns, our community coalition engaged in some new strategies, engaging students. You can read more about all of these on the website of UMass EDU Off-Campus Life. So a Party Smart registration we put in place, which allowed off-campus students to register their party with the Off-Campus Life office, that their phone number and address is shared with the police department. And if a noise complaint comes in, the student gets a courtesy call and 15 minutes to break up their party. If the party doesn't break up, the police will come and take action. That puts students in a position of responsibility and accountability and helps them manage their social events more responsibly. Walk This Way was a student-led peer education program, student street team that went out on the streets on Friday and Saturday nights and in a neighborhood adjacent to campus to remind students to be respectful as they were heading out for the evening, to keep their voices down, reminding them about the open container bylaw, underage consumption, and giving safety messages. Did a tremendous job in community building, as well as addressing some of the tensions that happen in an edge neighborhood where you have community residents and students living side by side, and some of the complaints that happen there. Team Positive Presence was another student-led group to sort of promote connection, positivity, kindness, and disseminate information about health and safety. They go off campus and do door knocks, give information, and communicate expectations to students in advance of critical weekends. Crime prevention through environmental design. We don't have time to talk about that here, but I do hope that you would look that up. We have employed that with our Campus Community Coalition to look at high-risk party areas and events. And basically that involves a team-based approach to altering the physical environment to change behavior, to reduce crime and the fear and improve quality of life. If I had more time, I would tell you about how we've used crime prevention through environmental design, but it's a wonderful way that communities and campuses can work together with some of those thorny issues, looking at the built environment to make the healthy choice the easy choice. So in closing, there's so much to share. And so much that we can do together working with our communities. And I think COVID-19 brought a lot of this sort of to a nutshell for me, is that remembering sticking to what works in prevention. We know what works. We know what risk factors are. We know what resilience is. We know what community building is, and we know how prevention works. So sticking to that helped us get through COVID. It'll help us get through all of the challenges together. COVID also being vocal and challenging assumptions. Don't accept the status quo. If something is concerning, be vocal about it. Challenge some of the assumptions and the ways of taking action. Many gaps in policy and processes were laid bare by COVID-19. Take advantage of those. If there were policy changes that happened in your community, or processes, new connections were made, take advantage of those, keep those connections going, build those, nurture and build those relationships with any new partners in prevention. And being bold, prioritizing health and well-being helped us make it through the storm of COVID, and keeping that momentum going is ever essential in our work. I'll end with some resources. I believe the links will be in the slides for you. These are some of the go-to documents and links that I mentioned here, as well as sort of primers and primers for things for community professionals wanting to work with campuses. And so I will end here and take some time for questions and so on.
Thank you so much. That was like a bunch of wonderful information, and I appreciate you taking the time to spend that and sharing that with us. We do have just a few questions at this moment, and so I'm going to go ahead and ask those in order that they appear. And then if anything else comes up, please, as we have this discussion, feel free to put those questions in the Q&A section, and we'll make sure to address those. So the first question is, what incentives have you seen work to keep landlords and property managers attached to the community coalition? The same question for bar owners and corner store owners.
I really love this question. I think the major incentives for our landlords are twofold. Is the landlords need tenants, and our students are the tenants. So they want good tenants. So they're interested in having the connections to students and to having information, knowing what the university, how is the university communicating expectations to the students, and what happens if the student gets in trouble. So they like to have those communications. We have an off-campus housing website that landlords can list their properties on. And if we have complaints about landlords, we can block them from listing their properties. And so that's an incentive. They also very much, they're business owners. And they're part of the community. Many of them live in the community, and they don't want to have a bad reputation. They don't want their property to be the dump that's causing all the problems. So they like to be at the table and to share their concerns with us so that we can partner. The bar owners and corner store owners, they have a lot of concern with fake IDs, with overconsumption, and similarly, they're interested to know what the campus is doing for prevention. They will often post our prevention messages or our resources. So if you can give them freebies and sponsorships, they love that sort of thing. The bar owners in our community, we don't have a lot of bars, fortunately, but they're very small. So if there's a bad business, the good businesses like to work with the university to sort of put pressure on the ones that are not sort of acting right in their minds. So those are some examples. The responsible retailer program we did list people that were members of our coalition, and they really liked that as well. So hopefully that answered your question.
Great. Yeah, I think that was very thorough answers. Thank you very much. I think that's really helpful information. Our next question is, with respect to the faculty's time, is there a better time than others to make that initial contact? So specific to faculty, I know you spent some time talking about better times of year to engage with the campus as a whole, but as we think about specifically faculty, is there a better time to make initial contact?
I think, as I think about faculty, I probably kind of spoke with a broad brush, and everybody's an individual. But September is when people are, getting their classes are starting, and, it's back to school time and everything like that. August is when people tend to be back in their offices and starting to meet and read emails and things like that. So I would say, August is not a bad time to introduce. Sort of towards the end of the semester is a great time. And then take advantage of some of those seasonal times. If Halloween is coming and that's something that you want to partner on, you might write in September. If you're looking for students to help with a project, definitely write to them before the semester. So, August, December is a great time to do that. I think the bottom line is if you do make a contact and you don't get a response, it just may be that your timing is off. So to keep trying.
Great. So that's really helpful. I work with campuses and campus faculty quite a bit, and it definitely is, there's challenges at different times of year for when to reach them. So that's a really helpful for myself as well as others. So thank you so much. And our last question we have is, does Massachusetts have a social host law? And I think that's helpful to put some of the UMass example that you provided into context.
Sure. Yes, Massachusetts does have a social host law, but it's not often utilized. And so local communities tend to handle things within their own local communities. So for example, if a parent is hosting a party where underage drinking is happening, that would be something where the social host law would fall into place. But more often than not, when it's students who are hosting a party with other students, social host law is not implemented. And so that is why we implemented sort of the nuisance house bylaw, because that was something we could do within our local community, above and beyond what the state law might be.
Great, that's really helpful as well. So thank you for answering that question. If there are any more questions, feel free to put them in. I don't have any more listed here in the Q&A section. While you do that and think about other questions that you might have, I'd like to put in a very strong plug for the Prevention with Purpose documents that are listed, the beautiful pictures here on the side. There is a specific resource that is about working with campus or community coalitions, and that's actually the flip side, right? So that's from the perspective of campus prevention professionals and how they can work with community coalitions. If you're either in higher education, and kind of, I think, as Sally said, I hope some of you here are, this is a useful resource for thinking about how you can connect with the community. As a community coalition, I think it's useful so you can understand what kind of where those campus prevention professionals might be coming from, what they might be looking for in terms of connections and how they can work with you. So I find that to be a really useful document. Prevention with Purpose, which is the larger document that is that has more information in it about how to implement the SPIF process on college campuses, is also useful as a community member to kind of understand the processes by which campuses and universities go through in their prevention work, and how that how understanding that can relate to your work. So I just have to put in a little bit of a plug for those because I find them to be really useful and fantastic documents. Not because I had any part in creating them, but also just because I think they're great. So I don't see any more questions. Sally, do you have anything to add about any of the resources here or anything?
No, I thank you for plugging the Prevention with Purpose. I think those are some of the most helpful little guidebooks for anyone doing prevention work, because they're readable, they're short, they get right to the point. And campus drug prevention, I mentioned International Town Gown Association. I think for our community groups, that's a wonderful entry point to working with our campuses. And I don't think I mentioned that there are joint memberships available. So an institution can join with their town and share a membership, which not only helps you go to the conferences at discounted rates, but gives you all the benefits of membership, which is great.
Wonderful. That's a useful tip as well. So for those of you who are living in communities that share space and community with a college campus, whether that be small or large, whether that be multiple smaller community colleges or larger universities, I hope that you found this useful and can find ways to connect with your campuses and the prevention work happening there to create healthier communities and better relationships between the two entities. So there is a question about whether this will be offered again. That's not planned at this time. We do, however, anticipate that this has been recorded, and we will be posting it on the website, so you can review it that way as well and share it with colleagues on your coalition. They might find it useful as well. I still don't see any other questions, so if there's no more questions or comments, Sally, any last words before we wrap up?
No, I would thank people for your attendance today, and I hope it was there was some nuggets that you were able to walk away with. And you know, as I mentioned in the beginning, prevention is like rock and roll, right? It's like you just keep rolling, and we keep our eye on the long game, and we never give up. And so I appreciate everyone for being here, and I love the work of prevention, and I know you all do too, because you're here on a summer day, and it's been my great privilege to spend some time with you. So thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for sharing your expertise with us today. Again, there's some links in the chat for you there, and if you want to grab those before you leave, we'll take just a second before we close the room. Thank you so much all for being here, staying.
Were you
Yep.
going to do the
Oh
exercise?
my goodness, I'm so sorry.
We aren't done yet. Hang on.
I'm so sorry, Sally.
Sally.
I'm so sorry. We do have a couple of announcements for you, and Sally, if you could share your slides one more time. They are actually at the end of. Oh no, they're not.
Oh, no, they're not.
I apologize. I am so sorry. I have them pulled up and I forgot. I apologize. That is on me. Let me grab those really quick. And again, if you have comments or questions, we do want to share with you that we have a number of upcoming trainings. And so those, I'm going to just pull those up really quick. I apologize.
You want me to share my screen, Erin?
I've got it right here.
Okay.
I am just not particularly skilled at switching between. Nope. Here we go. There we go. Okay, so sorry about that. So we have some upcoming trainings that we'd like to share with you. There are Prevention Across the Continuum is coming August 10th. We'll be talking about the new spectrum of interventions and how prevention fits into that. We'll be talking on the 23rd about understanding and implementing selective populations. While it's not a direct series, it is a useful follow-up to our Prevention Across the Continuum series. The Effective Group Facilitation Skills training for prevention professionals is on August 24th. That is full at this time. And if you're not signed up, I'm sorry to say that is full, but it is useful. Engaging youth in substance misuse prevention. Again, that's a training on the 29th that unfortunately is full at this time. Other trainings that are coming up on the 30th, we have underage drinking prevention, effectively using state data. I want to put in a little plug for this because I think it's going to be a really useful training about new data that we're seeing at both the state level, the national level, about how to impact underage drinking and how you can use state data to do that. Understanding and implementing indicated strategies is another piece following the continuum of care, or the continuum of care series and the implementing selective strategies. We also have the importance of advocacy for prevention. What is it? And tips for continuing it. So that's another great one on the importance of advocacy and how to do that. We have a number of great online courses, and on the Healthy Knowledge site, we have more coming. So there are currently 42 courses on substance misuse prevention. So take some time to look through there and find some courses that are relevant for you, for your coalition members, and your partners. And, oh, why is it not advancing? I'm so sorry. Please do, like we mentioned before, follow us and connect with us on social media. You'll see that we have a Facebook page. If you can click the following and like, you'll get all kinds of posts in your feed about the work that we're doing, upcoming trainings, and follow up to the trainings that we have been doing. So press the like button and the follow button, and those will come up for you. You can also follow us on LinkedIn. So the link is there. We also post a number of information there about our upcoming trainings, follow up to these trainings, and more information about the PTTC here in the Great Lakes. We do have a post-training feedback. It's a survey that just will take a few minutes. And if you want to, we'll put that link in the chat for you. So if you could just take a few moments, it's incredibly helpful for us to learn more about your experiences, and so we can continue to improve the services that we provide for you here in the Great Lakes region. We will put that in the chat. And again, there will also be a follow-up that'll come to you. We appreciate you taking the time to complete that as well. And we just want to thank you for being here, for being a part of this conversation, and for really thinking about the role that you can play as a partner with campus, university at campus coalitions and their prevention work. So thank you so much, Sally. Thank you so much to the team. If there are any questions or you need to grab any other links out of the chat, please do that now. Otherwise, thank you so much for your time, all of you, for being here, and to you, Sally.